share with you about Mirabai, and let's see if I can share my laptop. Can you see this? Okay. Don't forget love. It will bring all the madness you need to unfurl yourself across the universe. Talk about being free in love. So Mirabai, in her Bhakti, began penning poetry, and I will recommend Ishani to post some of her poetry, some of her singing, her recorded songs based on her poetry on the forum with a translation. She was born in the 16th century India. There was a lot of political tumult going on. She was born in a royal family, small feudal royal family. And from a young age, she saw girls getting married, and so she asked her mother, who will I marry? Who's my husband? Who's my husband? And maybe she was 5 or 6, and her mother gave her an idol, a murti, a deity of Krishna, who is an avatar of Ishvara. And an avatar is, if Ishvara dwells in every particle, if Ishvara is orchestrating the millions of galaxies, then Ishvara can temporarily take on any body, in any gender, in any culture, in any story, and in any timeline, and is taking on still minor avatars in your own life, you don't know. But Krishna was one such avatar of Ishvara, complete avatar. And she fell in love with Krishna. And originally what was playing, because she was born for devotion. She must have been a soul who has studied with a guru, who has received knowledge, who has circumambulated around bhakti, karma, jnana. She just hopelessly fell in love with God, with Ishvara. And she was married off at a young age, as was the tradition back then, and her partner was the crown prince of another kingdom. And he was very confused in the beginning because she rejected even his advances. She had difficulty being in a conjugal relationship because she kept saying, but I'm already married. And I'm married to Krishna. She really was meant to be like a Vairagya saint, someone who can just live by herself and meditate. But here she was, a householder in a royal family, and from morning to night she would sit by that murti. And I must explain to you what a deity or a murti or an idol is at this point, and then I'll explain later. There's a difference between God as a person and God as an abstract consciousness, which is the concept of bhakti. But when we humans have to understand that abstract consciousness, we create symbols, and no symbol is greater or less. So this could have been a murti of Durga, or this could have been a rock just picked up from outside her house under a tree, which could then represent Krishna or Ishvara. And that rock would be also offered garlands and a lamb. So in the Vedic tradition of bhakti, where there is freedom, there is also freedom to worship that abstract, universal, supreme consciousness, which is not a person and not a thing, in a symbol. And that symbol is called a murti, M-U-R-T-I, or a deity, or an idol. And I really prefer deity or murti. And an idol, IDOL, can be understood as an ideal. It is an ideal of that ultimate. That's why when we are looking at the different symbols of Ishvara, such as Ma Durga, Lakshmi, Ganesha, Shiva, from the Vedic pantheon, we will then understand that these are not people. These are really, their entire being is symbolic of something. For example, the snake where Shiva wears snakes around the neck and applies ashes from burnt bodies. So what is going on? And dances when Shiva is furious. So these are all the poetic imagination to imagine the perfection, the compassion, the blessedness, and the power and omnipotence and compassion of Ishvara. Now remember, I told you that Ishvara lives in every particle of the universe. So if you're talking to Ishvara, you don't have to necessarily do anything special, because Ishvara is also inside you, outside you, and so the entity, the principle, the abstract everything, the divine allness, is also present through that symbol, the deity, the murti. And so she was loving the divine allness as Krishna, and the divine allness, which is also Krishna, was loving her back. And this is Mirabai's experience. This is my experience with my Ganesha and my Durga and my Dhanvantari. These are not ordinary murtis for anyone else. But for me, they are that ultimate speaking to me. Now suppose someday I'm unable to access them for any reason. Then I will take a lump of clay, put it on a table and say, this is Ganesha. It becomes Ganesha. So you see, when there is freedom to understand consciousness, then there is also freedom to adore consciousness. And she started adoring divine consciousness, divine allness, Ishvara, as Krishna. And this bhakti is really not only devotion, but love through devotion. What are we offering in our devotion? Love. And just like we love our children, we love our parents, we love our guru, we love our nation, we love our friends. We make room in our ego that's consumed with love of material bodies to the love of the non-material in a material symbol, the deity, the murti. Even when she got married, she was holding on to her deity. She must have been 9 or 10. And fortunately, her partner, after being confused initially, saw something in her eyes and started respecting her. But unfortunately, a couple of years later, he passed away in battle. And now her father-in-law also passed away. And so now her brother-in-law ascended the throne, and her brother-in-law, her mother-in-law, they all were really embarrassed by Mirabai, because she would, sing and dance in abandonment. She would sing, and people would come from far and wide to gaze at her. Not only because she was, a royal widow who was singing and dancing in abandon, but because she was a saint, and people's eyes would fill up with tears. And when you are with such a person, your own buried longing for oneness with the cosmos awakens. And so crowds started gathering around her, And she would go on pilgrimages, and she would go to the temples, and people would follow her and sit around her, and she would seek the company of holy people. What has she written here? She has written, you taught your songs to the birds first. Why was that? She would argue with Krishna. And you practice your love in the hearts of animals before you created man. I know the planets talk at night and tell secrets about you. A limb just moved before me. A limb means it could have been anything that moved. The beauty of this world is causing me to weep. So you can see that she was besotted with Ishvara. This queen became a yogini. I have this section from my book that I can read for you. Oh, I can't find it. Never mind. Now look at this. We can experience through the murti this presence. So the murti, this has haunted the Vedic civilization and the Hindu tradition. Oh, they are idol worshippers. They worship statues. No. These are symbols. These are focal points to remember that ultimate reality which is invisible. So then her brother-in-law, Vikram Singh, was so embarrassed that he sent her a cup of poison, and she was told that this is amrit, it's nectar, it's good for you. And she drank it innocently. And she survived it. So she has written poems about how Rana, her brother-in-law, sent her a cup of poison, but Krishna changed it to nectar. Then they sent her some flowers in a basket. Hey, you can use them for worship. But instead of the flowers, there was a snake in it, and a really poisonous snake that bites the moment you remove the cloth. You remove the cloth, there was only a garland there, no snake. And then once Rana even had a talk with her and said, you should really die. Your husband's dead, your Krishna is not here. Why don't you drown? And she says, no problem. And she just walks into the water, but she floats. And then her devotees bring her out. She's finally put in confinement for many years. But there also, she was filled with light. She wrote many poems. And at some point, I think she was released from confinement, and then she traveled to Vrindavan, the birthplace of Lord Krishna. It's a city full of temples, thousands of temples. And that is where she dwelled. Something I want to share about her, so I'm going to find her writing. Here it is. Here is another translation. Something has reached out and taken in the beams of my eyes. There is a longing. It is for his body, for every hair of that dark body, because Krishna literally means dark, and he was dark colored, blue colored. All I was doing was being, and the dancing energy came by my house. His face looks curiously like the moon. I saw it from the side, smiling. My family says, don't ever see him again, and they imply things in a low voice. But my eyes have their own life. They laugh at rules and know whose they are, means my eyes belong to him. I believe I can bear on my shoulders whatever they want to say to me. And oh Krishna, here is what I have to say to you. Without the energy that lifts mountains, how am I to live? So her story resonates with defiant love for every obstacle and every adversity. And the bhava, the feeling that we can have towards loving Ishvara, if we so choose, can be abstract, or it can be Ishvara is your relative, bandhu bhava, bandhu, relative, friend, sakha, S-A-K-H-A, sakha means friend, bandhu, sakha, pita bhava, father, ma bhava or mata bhava, mother, and prema bhava, beloved. So in her case, Krishna was her beloved. We cannot fathom the depths of her bhakti. You can only imagine in 16th century, life was very difficult for women worldwide. And then, he teaches us something, and this is the closing of my satsang. The story is set in the 16th century. This is a real person. Some of it may be the imagination of the Indian people, but there is no discounting the fact that Mirabai was a bhakti saint in 16th century. She is even mentioned by the Sikh gurus who are big into bhakti. But she holds timeless lessons for us in the 21st century. Her societal constraints, they mirror the challenge that you and I will face today in pursuing the paths less traveled. The pressure to conform can be to your own family's religious beliefs, choices, spiritual pursuits, whereas you are being inducted into a free understanding of the cosmic principle. And it is Ishvara's choice that you receive these words from me. So they are surely tickling you. And then Mirabai's story is also teaching us to stay true to our authentic journey. She was willing to be considered mad by the society. She was not a mad person. She was a saint whose poetry is taught in the universities in America. And then her resilience when she was threatened by her very life and her personal crisis, and despite that, her emergence shows that even in the face of dangers, we have to, if we keep drawing strength from our spiritual beliefs, spiritual, not religious beliefs, we too will become resilient like her. And Krishna and the teachings in a scripture called Bhagavata Purana, which is the story of Lord Krishna, Ishvara as Krishna's avatar, the Bhagavad Gita, we have more of Krishna's wisdom. We don't have Krishna's personality as Ishvara. But for Bhakti Yoga, we look at the Bhagavad Purana also, and there Krishna has confirmed that those who ever follow the path of bhakti, then to protect them is my responsibility. Why? Because the universe is magical, and whatever you pay attention to pays attention to you. So when you pay attention to the ultimate power, the ultimate truth, you can imagine how much protection we get. You know, when I go on a 5-day detox all the way to another country, and I don't know most of the people there, and many of them have never eaten a khichdi or know what is mustard oil or this and that we are bringing. It's just completely an opportunity for many things to go out of control, many moods to be disturbed, many rashes to erupt, and all types of things to happen because I don't know these bodies. And yet I pray to Lord Ganesh. Shall I travel? Is this right for me? Yes. Yeah. Will you protect me? Will you protect my, I call it yasha, good fame. Yes, your yasha is my work. That's it. Then I become free. And it always happens. Thank yous, the claps, the gratitude. Is it mine? Perhaps. That one. So I'm not saying that religions do not bring us that. And I'm not saying that we have to connect with Krishna alone. But if we even look at our own cultural versions of the divine, take it out of that story, which is maybe exclusive, pertaining to a certain story, and look for the universal part, then why will Ishvara not be? Because Ishvara is not a Hindu god. Ishvara is a universal principle. So all the Jesus miracles that are happening from that same cosmic truth, which we choose to call Ishvara. Christianity may or may not have a name for that concept. So at some level, bhakti is a universal science explained by the Hindus in the Vedic text. We can use that science to examine our connection with the ultimate. Mirabai's story of impassioned, loving, love affair devotion is just one snapshot of the range of possibilities because, as I confirmed, it is truly your own eclectical journey. He was in a state of yoga and union. And when we are in a state of yoga, we become not the ordinary person because the ego's domain is limited. And the ego puts out so much fear, and the ego puts out so much catastrophization in the universe just through its thinking, that it often pushes away what is good. The moment we think of Ishvara in whichever cultural language you wish to look at, but use the same science. Do not think of a God only for chosen people, but for all beings, even for the tiny grasshopper that walks across the grass. Then you got it. And then you become uplifted in that thinking, because when the mind thinks of its own great divine source, the mind becomes blessed by that source. I would love to see your hands wave if you found the story of Mirabai exotic but inspiring. Beautiful. I think the biggest thing I take from Mirabai is permission to be authentic in my devotional love. Thank you so much. Take care. Jai Ma.